In April of 1989, a young woman jogging in Central Park was viciously beaten, raped, and left for dead. The crime shook the city, and quickly, 5 African-American and Latino teenagers were charged with the crime and convicted. But now a fictional account of that true crime is having a real-life impact. The story made headlines for months. Gangs of young men wilding in Central Park. A brutal rape.
5 youths were arrested at 96th Street, all between 14 and 15 years of age.
Police got confessions. The boys were convicted and spent up to 13 years in jail. After another man confessed to the rape, the convictions were vacated. Documentary filmmaker Ken Burns was the first to tell the story in detail.
First we was all together, then they started to put us in different rooms separately. What did you do?
The Burns documentary was tough on prosecutor Linda Fairstein, but still her career thrived. Now a new fictional Netflix series called When They See Us recreates the case and takes direct aim at Fairstein, suggesting racial prejudice was at the heart of the case.
Every black male who was in the park last night is a suspect. I need all of them.
Already, Fairstein has resigned from several boards, and her publisher has dropped her.
So is Fairstein paying a price decades later because of a TV show?
That's what Fairstein believes, writing in an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal that the series is an outright fabrication, going on to say the boys were involved in other crimes that night.
Incredibly, Fairstein says the 5 still had something to do with the rape.
And incredibly, the fictional version is getting credible attention in all forms of the media.
Watching your piece, I learned things that I didn't know. You made us see them in a different light.
The light of Hollywood. Academy Award-nominated director Ava DuVernay produced the film and believes the news media had it wrong at the start.
Hopefully, the film allows people to think again.
That it does. The thing about this that really interests me the most, because when Ken Burns did that piece in 2012, a lot of people were incredulous that he and his daughter worked on that. And I mean, the guys had already been, the sentences had been vacated, but the detail he had about that and just how innocent they were, but it didn't get that much attention. Really, there was no focus on it. And suddenly, this is easier to watch. You know, it's very entertaining. The young men are extremely sympathetic, as are the parents and the thing. But the idea that everybody did, the columnists and all these people who picked up on a fictionalized account. You know, we talked about this with Tom Fiedler a couple of months ago, because his character in that Donna Rice, Gary Hart film was completely vilified. He was turned into a monster as a reporter. And, you know, it's like everybody believed that, too.
I have a big issue with these these fictional treatments of factual events, and this just seems like here we go again. You know, I read Linda Fairstein's commentary in the Wall Street Journal, and if we are to believe what she says about what happened, it's pretty devastating. It's like the whole thing was fictionalized in ways that make her look bad. It makes her look like a racist. It makes her look like she trampled on the rights of these young men. This may all be true, but the fact is it was portrayed in a fictional treatment. And I find it kind of shocking that her career is now being destroyed over a piece of fiction.
I'm wondering if this is getting more attention now because it comes in the wake of some of these other explosive documentaries, such as the Michael Jackson one, the R. Kelly documentary. There are a lot of truth. Those were documentaries, a lot of truth in those, but also people argued about maybe they were taking license with the facts there. But it turns out now there's this legal case against R. Kelly. So the public has come to look at some of these kinds of productions as, wow, you know, maybe there is something there. And perhaps that is, that's the connection that gets so much attention to a TV show like this one.
It's scary to think that people are far more moved and motivated by a fictionalization than they are by actual journalism. I think that's what the R. Kelly story had been reported out at great length for years by an actual journalist until Netflix, I guess it was Netflix, got hold of it. I haven't seen this Netflix thing, but I saw the Ken and Sarah Burns documentary. And The facts are right there. The interrogation videos of the young men were abusive and unconstitutional. And they had the information, which Fairstein neglected to acknowledge in a Wall Street Journal piece, that a subsequent probe by the DA's office found that a lot of the facts, damning facts about her, were true and confirmed them. So,
but they did not condemn anybody who's part of the prosecution team, the DA at the time.
They undercut some of the claims she makes in her journal piece. So, you know, it's weird and disturbing to think that the public and history is driven more by a fictionalization than by the cold, hard truth that was laid out in very compelling form.
And I think that's the thing. It's how these shows are being packaged.
Well, I think it's a number of things. First of all, you know, Ken Burns doesn't usually traffic in that kind of story. So I think that his usual audience was like, well, that's interesting. But it didn't. No, I'm for real about this, and didn't pick up on it, even though, remember, he entered into that project because of his daughter. This was really his daughter's project.
She was on the defense team.
Yes, that is correct. So the other part about it is there have been so many pieces of this that have been, you know, brought to light not to be true. For example, that whole Wilding, all those, none of that was going on. That's been found not to be true over time. Before we ever got to the stories that Ken put in his piece and that now Ava is doing in the fictional piece about how they were treated and the fact that they didn't even know each other. It's getting a lot of attention because of Ava DuVernay. Ava DuVernay does her homework. And her last documentary was 13, which was about the prison system, black men being incarcerated wrongly, and unconscious bias. It was a documentary, not a fictional piece. So she had done that work, and because she did that work, one of the young men reached out to her and said, I wish you would take another look at our story, which is how this came to be. So I'm not saying this is not art and fiction, do not get me wrong, but she did not start as somebody just trying to whip up something from a Hollywood perspective. That's not how she rolls. So there is that. And then finally, they asked Linda Fairstein to be a part of the project. They reached out to her. They wanted to have her input. Please be a part of it. She said, as long as they talk to the young men, which is the story, I will not be a part of it.
No. She wanted to have final say.
Nope. She said she will not talk to them if they were in part of it.
She wanted editorial license over, you know, how it was done.
But the bottom line is, whether she wanted that or not, she didn't want to she wasn't going to talk to them if they're talking to the young men, which is the story. So we're done here. You know, she had an opportunity to say some things other than, I didn't do all this stuff.
They weren't in the story either. They were all played by characters.
No, but my point is that they were consultant in the thing, and she could have been as well. They reached out to her several times. She said no. And by the way, Ava DuVernay did not release that information. That came out on a panel with somebody else on her team who said, listen, I want to just respond to her writing this op-ed at this point. So let's take all of that into consideration. That does not mean to say this is not art and fiction, and there are different rules.